We're gonna walk down.
I think she took that as a challenge.
You know, Carolyn wakes sometimes.
What's it build up?
Gives you a shock.
Yeah.
I think we're to verse number 13 maybe, is what I marked.
That's what I got, Mark.
Yeah, chapter 8.
8 and 13.
Anybody need a
Jeffrey,
booklet,
need
pamphlet?
a Bible?
I do.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Have to get one.
There's 3 there.
Thank you, sir.
Y'all want one of them?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Anybody else? You got to take that, right?
And maybe there's one more kid one back here. That's really a kid with the first.
Brains making noise. That's what you hear. I had her come sit here.
All right, verse 13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spoke, how long shall the vision be concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? All right, from what I gathered in my reading, these were 2 Old Testament saints that came to Daniel during this vision. And one of them is speaking to the other one. How long shall the vision of the sacrifice be? And what I found that refers to the rebuilding of the temple and when they resume the sacrifices in the temple. And then he said, and the transgressions of the desolation. And that's still speaking of the temple, but the time frame there is the 3.5 years, and this is speaking of the tribulation period, I think. All right, and then the last part of it, let's see, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. What I found that it says, it refers to the Jewish priests and the worshipers who will not have access to the temple for the last half of the tribulation period. So he said, how long is this going to be, or when is this going to happen? One asks the other one, and he answers them. All right. Somebody got something else on that? Did I miss something? All right, 14. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. All right. So the other saint is now answering him. Says Daniel's vision is speaking to him and answering the other saint from verse 13. So he's answering him. Now, he says there 2,300 days. That's actually 3 years, 2 months, and 10 days is the actual time when the sacrifices will not be offered in the temple, and that the sanctuary has to be cleansed. Now, I've got two different commentators talking on this, so y'all can choose which, and basically they say close to the same thing. One of the commentators said that 2,300 is the number of sacrifices that they offer, and they offer 2 per day, which means 1,150, and in Daniel's day, the year was only 360 days, not 365 like it is now. The first Roman calendar, it was 360 days. So that would have been 3.5 years for them. Now, during this time is when the Antichrist will take over the temple, put up the statue of himself, and demand worship. And that's found in Matthew 24, 15, and 16. And let's see, I marked that. It says, this is what Jesus was speaking of when he said, when you therefore shall see abomination of desolation, okay, the desolation of the temple, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, which is the temple. Whosoever reads, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. And that's when it's talking about the Jews are going to flee to Petra. Remember we talked about that in Revelation. And this is going to happen about the midway point of the Great Tribulation. It's when the Antichrist has made a pact with Israel and other nations. Then he breaks that pact. And he invades Israel, takes over the temple. And again, Israel is defeated and flees to Petra. And in, this is spoken of, I've got a couple of scriptures here. Isaiah 16, 1 through 5 predicts the flight of Israel. Revelations 12 and 6 uses 1,260 days rather than the 1,150 here in Daniel. And I've got a little bit more to add to that in just a minute. It says 110-day gap is what we're talking about. The 1,260 days in Revelation, the 1,150 days in Daniel. Here's what makes up the gap. Daniel chapter 11 44, we hadn't got there. It says the Antichrist will be called away from Israel to fight other nations. And the sanctuary is going to be cleansed, the statue of the Antichrist thrown out, and the sacrifices will begin again. And this commentator says that this will happen 110 days before the end of the Great Tribulation. And if you add that 110 to the 1,150, you get 1,260 days. So they're basically saying the same thing. One just says part of it will be at the end of the tribulation period. Okay? Comments?
I think I missed something,
All right.
because my math is not mathing. And I know I missed something from what I understood the last you said.
Okay. Here it mentions 2,300.
Divided
okay.
by 360 is well over 3.5.
No. The 2,300 is divided by 2. Because they offered a sacrifice in the morning and a sacrifice in the evening.
And that must be what I missed, but I was thinking it
I don't
says
think
here.
I said that.
Well, you said something to that effect. It was
Yeah.
2.
Right.
More
And
than-
that's where they're getting the 1,150 days here. Because there were 2,300 sacrifices. One offered in the morning, one offered in the evening. And if you divided the 2,300 by 2, you get 1,150.
You can't be going old school math and common core at the same time. I don't understand common core.
I can't do any of it, so, I'm in sad shape here. Yeah, but that's where the 1,150 came from.
Okay, so we're cutting it, going by the sacrifices that they had and not the days that it was.
Right. Right.
All right, I understand now.
Right.
That
The-
makes better sense.
Well, yeah, and when they did the sacrifices, then they switched to days, to the 1150 days.
Okay,
And then added the 110 at the end to get the 1260.
I can math with that.
Okay. Yeah, I did not explain that well. Okay.
People don't want to go on.
All right. Another commentator went with the 2300 days, which is 6 years and 5 months.
There you go.
Okay. This is the second commentator on that one. 6 years and 5 months. But the tribulation period's how long? 7 years. So we're 7 months short. If my math is right. All right. According to this second commentator, the 2300 days passed, and there's two different things here. One is happening before the tribulation, at the time of the Antiochus that took over from Alexander the Great. 2300 days passed between the time that Antiochus first began his persecution of the Jews and the time that it ended. So that happened after Alexander the Great died and these people took over. This Antiochus, and it's Epiphanes, I don't know how to pronounce that. Epiphanes, close enough. He captured Jerusalem and started the persecution 3 years before he stopped the sacrifices. So this is the first time the sacrifices were stopped was back in those days. Now, if that's true, it means that the Antichrist, and now it's jumping forward to the tribulation period. It means that the Antichrist will start persecuting the Jews about 7 months after the tribulation period begins. So that's where you get your 7 months added to the 6 years and 5 months from the beginning. All right. All of this is a little confusing to me, but anyway, it says the most severe persecution and defilement will not begin until the midpoint of the tribulation period. The first part of the tribulation period, it's going to be bad, but it's not going to be as bad as the second half. And again, we studied that in Revelation. But
What, I got to change the subject, what chapter it is, Isaiah, did you say was talking about
Isaiah, let me
talking about
pull back.
we're traveling back to.
16, 1 through 5.
16, 1 through 5 predict the flight of Israel. All right, comments, questions, y'all help me out. All right. Nobody? Let's go to 15 then. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of man. So now, Daniel's looking for the meaning of the vision, and something like a man appears before him. Anybody know who it was?
Gabriel.
Gabriel. It was Gabriel. Daniel didn't know the meaning of this vision either. So the Lord sent Gabriel to him. All right, 16. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. He heard a man's voice telling Gabriel to give him understanding. Okay? The man's voice
That was God, wasn't it?
could have been God, could have been another saint. It doesn't say. But you know, John heard a man's voice. So, you know. this is the first time in the Bible where an angel is identified by name. And he called him, called out Gabriel. Only two of the angels are identified by name in the Bible, and that's Gabriel and Michael. Both of them are mentioned in Daniel. Michael's mentioned in chapter 10, verse 21. Now, there are two other fallen angels